Hello, my name is Emma Parada, and I will be discussing the Deepwater Horizon incident. So, what is it? The Deepwater Horizon is an offshore drilling rig that is located in the Gulf of Mexico, and unfortunately, an incident occurred there on April 20th in 2010. So, how did this incident occur? So, many of the workers that were on the rig were doing maintenance testing, and a mix of these tests, along with high pressurized methane in the capsule and methane that leaked into the diesel engines led to a fireball explosion and unfortunately a fire that killed 11 workers from the explosion. So cleanup efforts. From the explosion, 134 million gallons of oil was seeped into the Gulf of Mexico, and there are a lot of extraneous ways that the other corporations try to clean up the oil. So one of them being booms, and booms are essentially a water fence that contains the oil, and these were found very helpful, especially when skimmers were skimming the surface of the oil and collecting anything that they gathered. And then chemical dispersants were also very helpful as they planes would release these dispersants and this dispersants would essentially break down the oil into smaller pieces, and then this was beneficial towards any organisms that could have consumed the oil, but it was also not so beneficial because it could upset this. It could unbalance the acidity and pH of the water. So government involvement. At the time, the at the scene after the initial explosion, the Coast Guard was right on site and they tried to extinguish the flames of the rig and also save anybody who may have been around or harmed from the explosion. And then the Environmental Protection Agency was also there on site, and they were mostly in charge of gathering any organisms or wildlife that could have been harmed from the oil or explosion. And they were also sent; those organisms were also sent to rehabilitation with the EPA to regain their strength. And many organizations like the Coast Guard and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration put most of their budget of the year into the cleanup and after effects of the oil spill. So, environmental impact. After the Deepwater Horizon incident and the amount of oil that was put into the Gulf of Mexico, many birds were coated with the oil, and these birds lacked their hydrophobic feather layer that prevented cold water from giving them hypothermia. So, these birds unfortunately passed away from hypothermia, and many other organisms passed away from suffocation with their gills in the oil or poisoning from the oil itself. And another major effect of the oil spill was that the oil blocked sunlight for photosynthesizers, and these photosynthesizers that gathered most of their energy from the sunlight died and decreased the amount of oxygen in the Gulf of Mexico's water. And many organisms, such as fish and marine life, passed away because they lacked sufficient oxygen. And so a domino effect played out from that. So economical impact. So how was the economy impacted from during all this? So at the time, prices increased drastically because there was a decreased yield in consumer products from the Gulf of Mexico, such as fish. So many fisheries unfortunately went out of business because they could not gather the necessary yield of consumer products needed to make a profit. And so many consumers also had to deal with the increased prices of these products. Not to mention many homeowners were trying to sell their houses because not many people wanted to live nearby a large body of water that was filled with pollutants, and nobody really wanted to buy any of these houses as well because of the same reasons. And also mention that tourism drastically decreased because not many people as well don't want to travel to a city like Miami or New Orleans that is right next to a body of water that is dangerously polluted. So, what can we learn from this? So, some key environmental problems from our modern industrialized society on our planet are: number one, the heavy reliance on fossil fuels. With a developing society, we need some sort of energy, and unfortunately, fossil fuels are the cheapest way to go. So, coal and oil release a lot of harmful pollutants to our environment, and this could lead to deforestation, which also leads to a decreased profit in many lumber yards, and also increased ocean temperatures can lead to a decrease in colorful coral and also shells for many clams and oysters. And these things all have an effect on humans because we use corals, and we use um, forests as a recreational activity for fun. And not to mention that an increased global temperature means an increased breeding ground for disease transmitters such as mosquitoes. So an increased mosquito population means an increased not susceptibility, an increased possibility that many humans will be infected with these infectious diseases. So this all has an effect on humans in the end. So what are governments, corporations, and society doing to reduce damage inflicted on our planet? So number one, the major one, is that we are trying to limit the amount of fossil fuels that we are using. Even though the U.S. specifically is still heavily dependent on fossil fuels, we are also incorporating other energy sources, just such as wind, solar, and hydroelectric energy that release little to no air pollutants. And another one is taxing consumer products that were unsustainably gathered or collected, such as lumber that is from a forest that is being deforested, or a species that is going extinct. They're putting taxes on that to decrease the amount of consumers who want to buy that product. Not to mention, fines are being placed on people who have a surplus of trash and who are also dumping the trash. And also many corporations are switching from plastic to paper straws, and many solar panel energy sources are being reduced in price to make it more available for the public. So there are many different ways that we are trying to do our part. So what can the most of society do? So we can plant many green spaces in our backyards to try to increase the amount of water that our planet is absorbing. We can also use more public transportation to decrease the amount of fossil fuels we're emitting from our gas cars, which most of the population in the United States has right now. And we can also use sustainable appliances such as automatic lighting or energy sufficient dishwashers or refrigerators, anything that uses technology to decrease the amount of energy or water we are using. Not to mention incorporating solar panels into our homes, even though it may seem expensive. We also get tax breaks from it because of how sustainable it will be. And also reduce, reuse, recycle as much as possible to decrease the amount of trash that is going into landfills. So thank you for listening. I hope this was very helpful, and I hope the Deepwater Horizon incident inspired you to think about your part in the environment and how you could help our planet survive.